Hello Bishes, welcome back to another Draw with me. Today we're going to be talking about art advice or art tips that you should not listen to. And I know that the recent video I made was also called Reasons Why You Shouldn't Become an Artist, and I'm sorry in advance for making videos that are more about negative stuff, but I think that it's somewhat important to just kind of know about the pros and cons about, being an artist or deciding if you want to be an artist and seeing if you want to deal with any of these things, because nothing is going to be perfect at the end of the day, no matter what path you choose to go on in life. And I just want to talk about some of my personal experiences that maybe you might relate to too when it comes to bad art tips or bad art advice that you were given. So one of the pieces of advice you might have been given, most likely from an art teacher, is to not draw anime. And this is something I was often told when I was in school and building a portfolio to try to get into art schools. And ironically now, anime and Japanese animation is one of the most influential factors to Western animation. So I'm, first of all, really glad that I never let go of the influence I got from an anime style into my own work. But my main problem with people who have such opposition to anime is that, first of all, I think when people think of anime, they don't really think about the diversity that exists within it, because anime at the end of the day is just Japanese animation, which encompasses so many things. It can be like Studio Ghibli type of art. It can be more on the realistic side. There's super exaggerated cartoony ones. And there's just so much diversity in anime styles that when someone says don't draw anime, it's just like, just don't draw anything that might pertain to Japanese animation, which to some degree can be racist. However, this is not to excuse the parts of animes that sometimes can be overly sexist or overly inappropriate, and there are a lot of animes out there that contain a lot of offensive content, but it's kind of like that just for anything else as well. Hollywood and Western animation is also guilty of this, and anything that you are interested in life will probably have some level of problematic aspects to it. So the reasons I personally get annoyed by people who tell others to not draw anime or be inspired by it is because I can't help but feel that, number one, they are just taking these few bad apples of anime that might have gotten viral or something like that and then judge a whole style just based off of these few rotten apples and assume that the rest of anime is just all bad because of these few bad ones. But they don't know anything about Hayao Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli, Masaki Yuasa, Mamoru Hosoda, or Satoshi Kon, or any of these great anime directors who make these really abstract and beautiful films. Other reasons why I feel like art teachers might be telling people to not draw anime is just because they already have this established view of what is valid art, and that usually pertains to fine arts or art history and stuff like that. Or the third reason is that anime seems to be like the only thing that this student is interested in and the only thing that they're willing to draw, in which to some degree, depending on what it is the student wants out of life, I feel like, if you are drawing anime only and you want to go into an art school eventually and be good at drawing many different things, then yeah, you should learn to diversify. You don't have to give up on anime though, just to be able to diversify in other types of art styles too. So in my opinion, I feel like an art teacher or anyone who wants to encourage you to pursue an art career shouldn't deprive you of one style and just tell you that this is a banned style, never draw this ever again. Like, I feel like that's just such a harsh, extreme word that you might just be taking a student's enjoyment away from just drawing in itself. Like, yes, I think you should encourage people and students to draw other things beyond just anime, but I wouldn't say you should just get rid of this pre-existing interest that they have that got them into art in the first place. Because who knows, they might not be drawing anime forever, but it might be a great transitional phase for them to even get their foot into the art world. So this brings me to my next story, which is when I was applying to a lot of different art schools, and I was traveling to different art schools as well to get a feel of the campus, and I brought my portfolio and sketchbook to all of these schools to get the professors' opinions on it before I fully submit my work. And one of the sketchbook spreads featured a girl crying. It was a black and white ink drawing with black paint, and it was definitely more on the emo and depressing side. And I ultimately just wanted to, at the end of the day, show the diversity that I had within the different art styles and storytelling styles that I had. I just wanted to show that I'm capable of doing many things, whether it be happy, sad, angry, whatever. So when I first showed it to the first professor, he was actually really super excited about my portfolio, and it made me super happy. He was like, oh my gosh, we gotta show this to other people. Let's go show the other professors. So when he showed it to the second professor was kind of just flipping through my portfolio, kind of like as if I was wasting his time, you know, when people just kind of flip through things really fast and they don't say anything and they're just like judgingly observing it. So then when he got to the page where, you know, it was the drawing of the girl crying, he was just like, nope, don't like that. Nope, don't like that. Don't like that. And it's just like, you're not fucking helping me. So I personally don't have any issues with people not liking my art. There's art out there that I personally don't like, and I think it's normal for people to have preferences. However, I feel like if you're a professor that's going out of their way to attend an event to help potential students who might go to your school improve on their portfolio, I don't like it or don't like that isn't going to really help guide anyone in any way. So I just thought that instead of helping me, he was just establishing a power dynamic. Like, I pretty much just left that portfolio review on his side feeling like he just wanted to say that he's the professor and he's better than me and I'm the student and I'm the loser. So what happened to that sketchbook spread, you asked? Well, I had no fucking idea of how to improve it or what to do with it because I did not receive any guidance other than I don't like it. So what do? I paint it all over in black acrylic paint, and instead of a girl crying, I now draw a girl sitting on the ground with her head exploding into rainbows with some censored word that she's saying. And if you're interested in knowing where the sketchbook page is, it's actually in my accepted CalArts sketchbook. So what I will say from this experience is that, first of all, if anyone ever just tells you that they don't like your art as a piece of constructive criticism, you just don't listen to it, because at that point, that's just a preference. They're not telling you what you can actually do to make this communicate better to your audience. They're not telling you what you can do to actually make this piece of work stronger. So if it's just down to preference at the end of the day, well, everyone has preferences. Some people don't like pizza, some people like pizza, but that doesn't mean you stop eating pizza just because other people hate it. So going to my next piece of art advice that I myself personally did not listen to, and I feel like this is up to you whether if you want to listen to it or not, is to not use black as shading. And I feel like this mainly applies to doing realistic paintings or realistic coloring when you're trying to emulate a realistic piece of work. And I was often told by teachers to not use the color black because it's a color that doesn't really exist when you're observing this object in real life. Normally, shadows are produced by many different colors combined into one, and black doesn't really count as a real color. However, my personal perspective when it comes to art is when you're trying to emulate something that you see, it's not always about taking everything so literally as to how the world works. To me, creating art is trying to repaint or redraw or recreate something that you observed in real life so that when somebody else looks at it, they feel almost exactly the same way you did when you first saw this beautiful landscape, this character, this whatever it is you're drawing. And let's say you want to draw this beautiful landscape and it's sunset, but the shadows are so intense and so dark that, you know, black is one of the better colors to really emphasize this drama in the landscape. But no, you're so hung up over the fact that your art teacher told you that black doesn't exist, so you're trying to mix all these blues and browns, but for some reason you cannot reach the intensity of black to create this very dramatic piece. And I just think it's stupid to just withhold yourself from really using the color black over something like that, when it's like, if you know that using black is really going to help push your piece to evoke this emotion that you truly want to communicate, then just use it. Who cares what your teacher said? Who cares what the rules say? If this is what it takes for you to make your art piece as dramatic as you want, then use black. Also, when it comes to other forms of art like illustration, graphic design, or animation, I feel like the color black is often a great color choice used to create shapes and silhouettes. I feel like black is actually what helps push my art to look bolder and stronger. And while I know that this is completely different from painting realism, I feel like when I was younger, just the fear of using black was something that was always on my mind, that I was like, oh, I shouldn't use black because my art teacher told me not to. But at the end of the day, using black and making that bold decision to keep it within my style is something that I feel like has propelled me with improving in my art. This also leads to my next piece of advice that I don't think you should really listen to, is when realism seems to be the only valid type of good art, and in order to be a good artist, you have to be able to create pieces of art as hyperly realistic as possible. And yeah, I just don't agree with that. I feel like having the ability to replicate something as closely to realism as much as possible is definitely a skill in itself. However, I feel like viewing that as the only valid, true form of art just really limits us from so many of the other beautiful things in life, like animation. I particularly am in animation. It is definitely helpful to understand the fundamentals from life drawing to gestures, proportion, perspective, layout, etc. That is always going to help make your art stronger and more believable, because again, one of the pros of understanding how to create realistic art is that you know how to now incorporate it when you're doing something like animation, which is more imaginative, but you're grounding it with something that is realistic. And if you want to just stick with realistic art, then good for you, that's great. But I don't think that the people who chose to diverge away from it and start doing other types of art, whether it's animation, abstract, graphic design, illustration, or 3D, should suddenly be labeled as, not as good of an artist because they don't know how to do these hyper realistic renderings of, I don't know, whatever it is that they're looking at. In fact, now that I think about it, shouldn't they still be considered an artist because they're really good at being able to capture what it is that they're seeing, not in real life, but inside their imagination? Like, yes, I think it's impressive when people draw things that they see in real life, but what about drawing things that don't even exist, but somehow someone manages to create it and make others believe it? So the final piece of advice that you should not listen to if anyone ever gives you this type of feedback for your work is when they give you advice that is just totally not in line with what you were intending to do with your work. And this can even be more important than the art style in itself, because now we're talking about the message that you're trying to evoke with your work. And if you were trying to say something like, oh, catcalling is bad, street harassment is bad, but someone gives you advice that might go along the lines of like, maybe you should do something that actually supports street harassment or support catcalling, then bitch, we're on two different ends of the spectrum here. We're not even talking about the same idea anymore. Some of you may have already heard this story, but when I asked a professional artist for feedback on my second year student film, which is about why catcalling is bad and why the catcaller should learn from his mistakes, when asking for feedback about how this film should end or like what to do to make it stronger, that, the catcaller learns from his mistakes, I got the feedback of maybe at the end you should have some Beauty and the Beast moment where the catcaller transforms back into a human and he like kisses the girl and they like make up and they fall in love with each other. And I was just like, do you want me to be canceled? So as you can see, that piece of advice did not align with the message that I was trying to convey with my student film. And just because a higher up or professional artist who is older and more experienced than me gave me that advice doesn't mean that I always have to listen to it, and neither should you. I I still think constructive feedback is needed at the end of the day because you need that fresh eye from others to know what it is that maybe you're not seeing that you could improve on. And I also think that you need that healthy balance of knowing when to follow advice and when to not, especially if it's something that doesn't align with you. So if it's something that is totally out of what you were envisioning for this piece and not even what you were originally going for, then you don't have to listen to it. Anyway, that was all I was able to squeeze in for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Even any of the advice that I mentioned in this video, you don't even have to listen to it. You can do whatever you want and, live your life, okay? But yeah, thank you again so much, and I will see you all in the next one. So peace out and stay wholesome, bitches.